Can't see it though.
Oh yeah, they're not letting it. Yeah, there's more signs of by the table up here.
Alani.
There's another one. Ooh, baby.
Oh, I didn't see it. Oh.
It is. Take turns with our arms. Here.
I know.
Get out now.
I'm with Sarah.
That's Murphy.
Welcome, everyone, to the rally to end fossil fuels. My name is Gladys Delgadillo. I work at the Center for Biological Diversity, and we are here with the People versus Fossil Fuels Coalition. Yes. People versus Fossil Fuels is a coalition of over 1,200 groups dedicated to ensuring President Biden uses his executive authority to stop approving fossil fuel projects, phase out fossil fuel production on our federal lands and waters, and we are here today because fossil fuels are poisoning our communities, our climate, our democracy, and it is finally time to end the era of fossil fuels. We are in an unprecedented moment of power to do this. The United Nations Secretary General is hosting a Climate Ambition Summit on September 20th, challenging countries to make commitments to phase out fossil fuels. And millions of people will soon take to the streets to see that President Biden and other world leaders rise to that challenge. This is the time to speak truth to power. And I am pleased to say that we are joined today by an incredible lineup of brave climate justice advocates who are not afraid to do it. So without further ado, I would love to introduce our first speaker. Sarah Thomas is an advisory board member of the grassroots Land, Air, and Water and Community Advocacy Group, Sovereign Inupiaq for a Living Arctic, a leading voice behind the Stop Willow campaign, which she helped to co-found as a mother, graduate student, and community member in her hometown, Utqiagvik, Alaska. She is also an environmental justice organizer with Alaska Community Action on Toxics. Please welcome Sarah.
Thank you. Suvin, greetings. My name is Sarah Thomas. It's a privilege to be here representing the two great, amazing Alaska-based organizations that I do. But I speak primarily today as a human being on Turtle Island, a U.S. citizen, and a mother of 6. The message I'm bringing today is simple. The transition to clean energy is possible if we will just get our leadership to stop letting oil and gas companies play games with our lives. We know we did not get to this transportation and energy monopoly situation out of nowhere. The narrative that big environmental groups are controlling any local opposition voices is not true. and especially detrimental to the youth of our community. I came to this work as a young college graduate returning home to Utqiagvik, wanting to help create a co-op garden for community wellness. And I came up against a political block even then. I was told that it would be a conflict of interest for the one corporation-run store at the time with fresh produce. Yet there's a conflict of interest between ongoing fossil fuel production and life on Earth. We are watching Exxon's own climate projections come to fruition, and we need a government and society that will envision the next 7 generations, like the people of this land always have, and stop hyper-focusing on the next 7 quarters. Robert Thompson, a knowledgeable and respected elder who is also a wildlife guide and SILA board member from Kaktovik, Alaska, shared, for-profit corporations are not community. In Alaska, they are posing as the community, excluding and suppressing differing viewpoints and pushing for maintaining course toward destruction fueled by greed, inequity, and wastefulness. In my community, Utqiagvik, like many other frontline communities around the country, there's already too much cancer, respiratory illness, mental illness, and other chronic disease that comes along with emissions and the pooling of contaminants in the magnetic north. The fish, caribou, polar bears, birds, and other wildlife are already feeling the impacts of our emissions. Our coastline is changing at a scary pace, and we are affected by petroleum byproducts like single-use plastics and how they break down into microplastics and enter our bodies. We're just now beginning to realize. We at SILA are suing to stop the Willow Project because a just transition cannot be fueled by another 30+ years of emissions. We are calling out false solutions as well. If it doesn't cut emissions or address our plastics and chemicals problem, it is not a true solution. We're asking Joe Biden today, please be the leader we need right now and lead us in a rapid transformation, considering Indigenous sovereignty and subsistence. We aren't talking about brain science. We are talking about channeling investment into healthier technologies and economies, programs and initiatives that reward and encourage energy conservation, basically transformation into something we have never seen before. We were reminded during the pandemic that we can come together in an emergency to do super hard things, and we need you, Joe Biden, to recognize the climate crisis with the appropriate level of urgency. We need you to use your power to reverse your decision on the carbon bomb that is the Willow Project and stop approving new petrochemical plants. We'll be going to New York next week. Please join us.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Our next speaker is one of the Senate's strongest voices for declaring a climate emergency. As Oregon's U.S. Senator, Senator Merkley's goal is to make Washington work for working Americans. He's calling for action against climate chaos, breaking free from plastic production and pollution, and maintaining a sustainable planet. Senator Merkley.
Greetings, everyone, and I see also that my a partner in just a huge champion in taking on climate chaos, Senator Markey of Massachusetts, has joined us and will be speaking in a moment. Thank you for coming and thank you for your championship, Ed. This Sunday in New York City, thousands of Americans are going to rally to put an end to fossil fuels and save the planet from climate chaos. Clearly, saving the planet is the most important issue facing humanity. But here's the ugly and brutal truth. Right now, humanity is failing. The planet is crying out for help. July was the hottest month in human history. July 4th, the hottest day in human history. Record droughts, flash floods, 100-degree ocean water temperatures off Florida, fueling hurricanes. Fires burning everywhere all the time, in Canada, in Alaska, the whole West Coast, the entire city of Lahaina, Maui, and the globe. With all of this catastrophe from climate chaos, has humanity yet curtailed its use of fossil fuels and stopped producing carbon dioxide and methane?
No.
No. Humanity put more carbon dioxide into the air last year than any other year in human history. And this is simply a crime against humanity. We continue drilling and pumping and burning, paving the path to oblivion. And that's why I'm applauding the leadership of the United Nations. Secretary Guterres is pulling together the Climate Ambition Summit this weekend. He's putting the spotlight directly where it should be on fossil fuels. Let's be clear, there's only one solution: a rapid transition from a fossil fuel energy economy to a renewable energy economy. But the world will not act at the speed it needs unless the United States leads. The richest nation, the nation's generated more CO2 than any other, the nation that right now is the largest producer in the world of oil and the largest producer in the world of fossil gas. We keep drilling, we keep pumping, we keep burning. But America must lead by the power of its example. And that example will not earn the respect and partnership of the world in taking on climate chaos. So we knew a different example. And it's that different example that we're calling on President Biden to now. First, President Biden, declare a climate emergency. Put all the powers of the executive branch into action. Second, stop greenlighting and funding new fossil fuel infrastructure. No more Willows, no more Mountain Valley pipelines, P2 LNG terminal, no more, in my state, expansion of the GTN Express to double the amount of fossil gas. Not only do fossils fuel our planet, they poison our politics. 1% of that $300 billion that the American companies made last year invested into politics, that dark money buys leadership in politics all across the nation. We have to end the flow of dark money in politics. At the same time, we're ending the flow of oil. The right policy is not just keep drilling and hope demand will disappear. The right policy is this: keep it in the ground. Stop exporting. Third, stop exporting fossil fuels all over the world. Reinstate the ban on the export of crude oil. Fourth, lead a real and just transition to clean energy that respects and replaces the enterprises that are polluting our black and brown communities, our frontline communities. And launch a manufacturing plant in America so that we actually build and deploy here in America the 3 billion solar panels we need to meet President Biden's goal of fossil-free electricity by 2035. And finally, educate America about false solutions. False fossil gas, it's a false. Fossil hydrogen is a false solution. The F in fossil stands for false. Plastics are a false solution. We cannot afford to take paths that don't work and actually pour gasoline on the fire. Friends, thank you for being on the street, because for us to succeed, we need to have Americans in the street. We need the voices in the street and their voices in the halls of Congress demanding action. That is what political leaders listen to. This is why what you all are doing is so important. As this sign over here says, Joe, for the love of your grandchildren, we want action. We want action now.
Thank you so much, Senator Merkley. Our next speaker, Senator Markey, has served the Commonwealth of Massachusetts as a congressman and U.S. Senator for more than 40 years, authoring some of the most important laws in both energy and the environment. As chair of the Clean Air, Climate, and Nuclear Safety Subcommittee on the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee, Senator Markey has been a powerful and effective national leader for enhancing energy efficiency, transitioning our economy to clean and sustainable energy resources, and mitigating the consequences of climate change. Senator Markey is also one of our champions for our campaign to stop fossil fuel exports. He is the sponsor of the Ban Fossil Fuel Exports Act, and he knows that one of the most important things President Biden can do when he declares a climate crude oil export ban, and we couldn't be happier to have him here to tell us why. Senator Markey.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you all so much. Thanks for all of your leadership. Young people are leading us. Young people are speaking the truth about the impact which oil and gas and coal are having upon the climate. on the way we live, on the impact it's having upon the poorest, most vulnerable people on our planet. And that's why 4.5 years ago, I introduced the Green New Deal with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez so that we would change the discussion, so that we would create a movement that would create the momentum, so that we would ultimately have a moment like we had last year when we passed the biggest climate bill in history to reduce our dependence upon fossil fuels, so that we would be able to deploy wind and solar, all-electric vehicles, battery storage technologies to break our dependence upon big oil, break our dependence upon OPEC, break our dependence upon ExxonMobil and all of those energy companies. That has been the crisis we've been in now for 50 years, since the first Arab oil embargo. We have been too dependent upon oil. Unbelievably, the United States on a daily basis exports 8 million barrels of oil a day. And how do we do that? We drill here in the United States to send oil overseas. We despoil the environment here in the United States in order to export oil overseas. And then what happens as we start sending that oil overseas? Saudi Arabia takes more oil off of the market. Russia takes more oil off of the market because they have a stake in higher inflation rates. In our country, their goal to defeat the Democrats, to defeat Joe Biden, so that we will not be able to pass the second climate bill. And the next one will be bigger than the one we passed last year. That is what this oil issue can do. Dangerous, pernicious way. For far too long, fossil fuel companies have padded their pockets at the expense of American families and frontline communities, all while fueling our global climate crisis. In 2023 alone, we have witnessed one devastating event after another. Flooding in Vermont and in Libya, in Canada and in the Philippines. Raging wildfires in Hawaii and in Canada. These are not isolated events. They are links in a chain forged by our own decisions and by our own emissions. Our country, our planet, doesn't need more fossil fuel facilities or oil exports. What our country needs is an oil change once and for all. And that's why I'm so proud to be here with Jeff Merkley, with Congresswoman Tlaib, with Congresswoman Lee, Sarah Thomas, with Youth Leader Keanu Apples Josiah, to demand that the United States does its part to end fossil fuel expansion and profiteering. It is clearer than ever that we need to do a U-turn on this road to disaster nationally and internationally, and collectively we have the power to take the wheel. But we have a lot of work to do. We have to, 1, stop approving new fossil fuel projects. 2, phase down fossil fuel production so companies are not leasing our lands and water for pennies on the dollar. 3, reinstate the fossil fuel ban. Exports so that we can prioritize American consumers, protect our climate, promote environmental justice, and encourage the United States to establish itself sufficiency with our own renewable energy production here in the United States. We must end our fossil fuel addiction and create climate justice ambition. This movement is a supercharged source of renewable energy, and it will power our fight for a livable future. We need to be all in, all together. Let us accelerate and commit the United States to take the bold and necessary steps required to seize a fully clean energy future. Young people are the leaders. It is time for us to demand the end of drilling for fossil fuels here in the United States. Thank you all so much for everything that you are doing.
Thank you so much, Senator Markey. Next, we have Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib. Representative Tlaib is a mother fighting for justice for all. She is a Detroit native of Palestinian heritage, born to immigrant parents. She has fought relentlessly for Michigan's 12th district and marginalized communities around the country, fighting corporate greed, advocating for clean air and water, social justice, ending poverty, and more. She's also one of the leaders of our campaign to phase out fossil fuels on federal lands and waters. Now, as the Biden administration updates oil and gas regulations for public lands and develops a 5-year plan for federal oceans, she is helping us push to phase down federal fossil fuels by 2030. Representative Tlaib.
Thank you so much to the incredible senator, especially Senator Markey. Thank you so much for the incredible work you're doing. And of course, my wonderful sister in service and my mentor in my first term, Barbara Lee, who's been just an incredible champion on this. I just can't express to you all the courage, how inspiring it is for me. And you know, again, so you all know you're not alone in this fight. I'm honored, of course, as always, to be with all of you, but I be remiss if I don't bring my district into this conversation of the real impact of doing nothing around the climate crisis and really what fossil fuel industry has done to my own community. I was born and raised in Southwest Detroit, and I live in Wayne County, which is a one of the most populated counties in our state. And, we haven't met Clean Air Act standards in over a decade. We have some of the highest rates of asthma among our children. We have a number of issues that continue to impact our communities. Even when during the pandemic, if anything, we realized the environmental racism that was going on because majority black neighborhoods were housing the only oil petroleum refinery. And again, they're right now in the application to actually expand to be an operation in full capacity. Marathon Oil with the spills and the explosions and the backdrop of this incredibly important, I think very, very important community in Detroit. Again, they feel very much like they have become the sacrifice zone for those that are trying to profit. You all know that we're a critical moment in our history. It's fossil fuels versus our planet. It's fossil fuels versus our future. And I know damn sure what side I'm going to be on. Big oil and gas are fighting for more profits, but you all are fighting for our lives. This fight may be entering a new phase, but last I checked, MVP isn't finished, and the approvals of the Willow projects can still be reversed, no matter what misinformation gets spread. The climate bomb projects aren't about national security, y'all. They aren't about energy security, and demand for fossil fuels, is declining now and into the future. These projects are about making money for a small handful of people at the cost of the entire ecosystem and communities that will be sacrificed for greed. There's still time, Mr. President. Revoke and deny presidential permits. You can announce an leasing and do a fossil fuel phase out. You can also declare what we know is happening. You can declare a climate emergency today. I want you all to know that your efforts are working. You are changing the status quo in the United States Congress day by day. And I sent a letter to President Biden calling for a fossil fuel phase out by 2030 that was signed by 29 of my House colleagues, including 5 members of our Democratic leadership. Our climate justice movement is big, it's strong, it's growing every single day because of the work that you all are doing and speaking truth to power. We are calling on President Biden investment in the Inflation Reduction Act with strong administrative action to phase out fossil fuels. We know that the White House and the Department of Interior have the legal authority to take action, but we have to supply the grassroots energy and the people power movement that makes the inaction impossible. We already seen results, and you all know last week the administration canceled 7 oil and gas leases in Alaska's Arctic National Wildlife Refuge because of you all. And the decision is, again, direct result. Grace Lee Boggs in Detroit taught me something. She said grassroots movement, again, transformative change that we've seen in our country. I don't care if it's voting rights, civil rights, or organizing unions in the workplace. It came from direct action in the streets. That's when that action ended up leading to Congress and acting. The march to end fossil fuels this weekend in New York is a historic moment in the climate justice fight. We will work inside the halls of Congress. My colleague Barbara Lee, and so many others, with the movement outside in the streets. And even more important, again, working with the people in our districts that are directly impacted. You all working together are more powerful than lobbyists can throw at Washington, D.C. You will not be ignored because you're going to demand, again, not to be ignored. We are going to end fossil fuels because we don't have any other choice, y'all. Thank you again for your courage, for your inspiration. Sometimes being in space with all of you reminds me again why I even ran for Congress, why I'm even here. Because again, you all remind me of the importance of what we do to fight for our future. Thank you all so much.
Shut down Enbridge Line 5!
Thank you so much, Representative Tlaib. Our next speaker is a tireless advocate for environmental justice. As ranking member of the House Appropriations State and Foreign Operations Subcommittee, Representative Barbara Lee has fought year after year for federal funding to combat the climate crisis in the appropriations process. As a member of the Steering and Policy Committee, she is the highest-ranking Black woman appointed to House leadership. I will now turn it over to Representative Lee. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Gladys, right, for that very warm introduction, but also for your tremendous leadership. And I just want to thank everyone for being here because, you know, it's not that you're the future. You are here, leading. And it's so important for us to stand with you because we have to have you leading. Those of us on the inside, this inside-outside strategy, that's the only way we're going to save our planet. And so I just want to thank you all for making sure that we hear you, we see you, and you're not going to let up. So thank you again for being here. Let me say to my colleague, Congresswoman Tlaib, she came to Congress and hit the ground running. There are very few members who understand and clearly articulate, but also work to address the intersectional issues around climate, whether it's poverty, whether it's healthcare, whether it's our democracy, reproductive justice, you name it. Rashida Tlaib came here to Washington with that perspective and fights on these issues each and every day. And so I just want to thank her for being that voice also here to make sure that we wake up some of our members who haven't quite got it yet. But because of you all, because of Congresswoman Tlaib, we see a lot of progress now. But we have to keep the gas pedal, right? The electric gas, the electric vehicle going. Let me also say a couple of things. First, we deserve a world that's free, really, from deadly, toxic fossil fuels. Also, let me thank the Center for Biological Diversity for your work and for coordinating this very powerful group of activists and elected officials. And we're here because the climate crisis, it is destroying our communities as we speak. Deadly fires in Hawaii, record-breaking heat, droughts and fires in California, and devastating flooding across the globe. They're dominating the news. But let's be clear, the climate emergency is here. Right now, it's here. And it will be here to stay until the United States begins phasing out fossil fuels. These catastrophic events have been all across the press in the last few months. But the underreported impacts of fossil fuels are just as important. For decades, low-income communities and communities of color have borne the brunt of climate change. 1 in 5 people worldwide die from pollution, and they are disproportionately people of color. They're women, they're vulnerable populations. Now, I grew up in El Paso, Texas, under the shadow of the Asarco copper smelter. I could have easily been killed by pollution. In the 70s, the CDC found that 62% of children in my neighborhood, in an immigrant black and brown neighborhood in El Paso, under 10 living near this plant, had toxic levels of lead in their blood. Family, my friends, my entire community. And so I grew up as a child understanding what the climate emergency was all about way back in the day. Now, of course, in California, we're faced with, once again, as I said earlier, a climate crisis of drought, wildfires, you name it, breaking heat, record-breaking heat. So my personal experience also drives me actually to this day. And so I'm very proud of all of our colleagues, especially Representative Grijalva, the most comprehensive environmental justice bill in the United States in our history. The Donald McKeachum Environmental Justice for All Act in honor of our late great friend and climate champion, Congressman Donald McKeachum. I'm also pushing to ensure that we teach the next generation about the harm as it relates to fossil fuels and the harm that they cause to their communities with my legislation supporting the teaching of climate education in schools with Representative Frost and Representative Hayes. Very important for young people, and young people in high school wrote this bill. We have a lot of work ahead of us to do, but we're making progress. Just last year, I was able to include language in the appropriations bill that empowers women across the globe on the front line of this crisis. I was at COP27 in Egypt, and I am telling you, the rest of the world is looking to us because we have been, unfortunately, the polluters throughout the world. And so they're looking for us now to repair the damage, which is what you all are making sure we're going to do. If we don't fulfill our moral obligation to address, we can't expect other nations to do so either. So yes, I urge President Biden to declare a climate emergency right now. I said it's here. Right now, today, declare a climate emergency. Phase out fossil fuels now, today. Limit liquefied natural gas exports and give, yes, the climate crisis the attention and the resources that it demands. Because we must protect this planet. We must make sure that there is a planet for all of you and for your children and for your grandchildren. Thank you again for being here. Thanks, everybody.
Next, first of all, thank you to Representative Barbara Lee.
Yay, Barbara Lee!
Next, we have Representative Schakowsky. She was elected to represent Illinois' 9th Congressional District in 1998 after serving for 8 years in the Illinois State Assembly. Schakowsky serves in the House Democratic leadership as Chief Deputy Whip and Protection Act. The act would ban fossil fuel exports and prohibit the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission from approving new fossil gas terminal permits. Representative Schakowsky.
Above all, I'm here to thank you. I really appreciate and believe in the grassroots activism that you represent that's going to change the world and save the planet. So thank you so much for everything that you're doing. Thanks to Barbara Lee, my dear colleague. You know, people say, and I'm the one of them that says Barbara Lee speaks for me. She is the best. But as was just mentioned, I have the Future Generation Protection Act. And do I have any illusions, Congress, in this House of Representatives, that we're going to get this bill passed? No. The bills that we are introducing now are unlikely to pass because the Republicans are in the pocket of the fossil fuel industry. But we are preparing for the next election where we win and we do everything we need to do to save the planet and to save our people. We can do this. Are you ready for that fight? We can do it. That's where we're focusing. But let me tell you what the bill is. I am reintroducing it, and I am going to be reintroducing it next week. So what it does, Bill, what it does do is ban greenhouse gas emissions from all new power plants. Number one. Number two, we are going to end hydraulic fractioning. Let's do that. And number three, we are going to ban crude oil exports from the United States of. This is a simple three-part plan. We can get it done as soon as we have a majority. And in the meantime, we're going to be reaching all Americans to make them understand, as if they don't already, the hottest summer in the history of and all of the incredible devastation in our communities in the United States and around the world. It's amazing to me that everyone in the Congress doesn't understand how important it is that we get to go right now to make sure that we make these advances. I am working with you. You are my family. You are my brothers and sisters, but we're also doing it for future generations. So let's pass the Future Generation Protection Act as soon as we can. Thank you. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Chakowski. Our final speaker is Keanu Arpels Desaya, an 18-year-old climate justice organizer with Fridays for Future New York City and one of the lead organizers for the upcoming March to End Fossil Fuels.
Thank you. My name is Keanu Arpels Josiah. I'm 18 years old and with Fridays for Future New York City. I'm a senior in high school. Firstly, I want to thank the members of Congress who are here today. Thank you for standing with us for a livable future. I'm missing school today because Libya is underwater. 10 people are displaced in one day. Because last year, 33 million people were displaced in one day in Pakistan. Because this summer, we saw a tropical storm in Florida. Because this summer, in New York, the sky turned orange while we were in class. Because this summer was the hottest summer on record, and yet the coolest summer. The climate crisis is here and now. And yet here in this city lie some of its culprits. The US is the biggest emitter of fossil fuels in history. President Biden ran a campaign promising to be a climate president, looking our generation in the eye and saying, "I will end fossil fuels." He continues to approve fossil fuel projects and protect the fossil fuel industry at the expense of our generation, humanity, and at the expense of a livable world. Each time President Biden approves a fossil fuel project, it further supplants the death and displacements and horror. It takes us away from a livable future and harms us. It worsens societal inequality. The Willow Project, the Mountain Valley Pipeline, Alaska LNG, drilling in the Gulf. Each time President Biden approves fossil fuel projects, it takes him farther from the promise he made to our generation, the generation that got him elected. We called on phones, volunteered in record numbers, and showed up at the polls. More than a third of 2020 votes came from the youth. We expect him to fulfill his campaign promise to our generation to end the era of fossil fuels. That's why this Sunday, on September 17th, tens of thousands of people, of young people, taking the streets of New York City in the biggest climate march in the U.S. in 5 years. The March to End Fossil Fuels will be a historic, intergenerational, and cross-societal march, making it clear that President Biden needs to restore his promise and end the era of fossil fuels now. The march is just days ahead of the Nations Climate Ambition Summit, where the Secretary General is calling for real and immediate action to end fossil fuels from world leaders. The U.S., as a recent report put it, is planet wrecker in chief, responsible for the largest amount of fossil fuel emissions, so the onus on action is on the U.S., on President Biden. The March to End Fossil Fuels makes it clear that us, the young people, and younger generations, the movement, see the U.S.'s actions as beyond unacceptable and unjust. We voted for a climate president, not for fossil fuel expansion. Thank you.
Thank you, Keanu, for missing school to help to lead us. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I really appreciate everyone being here. I think what we really need to take away from this moment is that we can still avoid the most catastrophic effects of climate change if President Biden acts boldly to end fossil fuels. But he must do so now. We are here to help him get it done, and we could not be more excited to keep up the pressure in New York City. Please stay tuned for that. I want to thank you again for coming. We're going to close the program now, but please feel free to come talk to us one-on-one. Thank you.
Do you want me to